My family burst into applause when my father called my brother the provider. I let them have their moment before I exposed the $10,000 credit card debt I'd been paying for him. The silence was deafening, but it was just the beginning of dismantling their golden child myth. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The scent of my mother's roast beef usually felt like a warm hug, but tonight it was suffocating. I sat at the polished mahogany table of my childhood home, feeling the familiar exhaustion of a 60-hour work week press down on my shoulders. It was my father's birthday, and the whole family was gathered. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and the star of the show, my younger brother, Leo. He sat across from me, effortlessly charming, regaling everyone with tales of his latest, almost breakthrough with his tech startup. My parents, Richard and Helen, hung on his every word. For as long as I could remember, Leo was the sun around which our family orbited. I was the moon, steady and predictable, there to reflect his light and manage the gravitational pull of reality. I was the architect, the one who built tangible things, but he was the visionary. I was picking at my green beans when my father stood up, tapping his glass for a toast. His chest swelled with pride. "I just want to say how proud I am of my family," he began, his eyes sweeping the room before landing squarely on my brother. "Especially my son, Leo. He's a true provider, always has been. He works so hard to build a future for himself and one day his own family." The room erupted in applause. My aunts cooed, my uncles nodded in hearty agreement, and my mother's eyes welled with tears of joy. I just watched, a cold knot forming in my stomach. A provider. Leo, who just last week had called me in a panic because his credit card was declined at a fancy restaurant. Leo, whose business expenses I had been quietly covering for the better part of 2 years. The applause died down, and my father beamed, basking in the collective admiration for his golden child. The injustice of it all, the years of my quiet sacrifices, the secret financial burdens I carried for him, welled up inside me. It was a bitter tide I could no longer hold back. I leaned back in my chair, the wood creaking in the sudden silence, and offered a small, cool smile. "That's wonderful, Dad. I completely agree." Everyone looked at me, surprised by my endorsement. I let the moment hang in the air before delivering the line that would shatter the fantasy. "Perfect. Then he can finally handle the $10,000 credit card balance I've been clearing for him every month." If a bomb had gone off in the dining room, it would have been less jarring than the silence that followed my words. Every fork was frozen midair. Every smiling face was now a mask of disbelief. My father's proud expression collapsed into confusion, his mouth slightly agape. My mother, Helen, clutched the pearls at her neck, her eyes darting between me and Leo as if searching for a script. Leo, however, had the most dramatic reaction. His face, moments before alight with self-satisfaction, had turned a pasty white. He made a small, choking sound, his hand flying to his throat as if my words had physically struck him. He looked like a fish pulled from water, gasping for the familiar, adoring atmosphere he was used to. My Uncle Mark was the first to break the spell. $10,000? Emma, what on earth are you talking about? I kept my gaze level, focused entirely on my brother. "I'm talking about the Visa card in his wallet, the one linked to my account, the one he uses for critical startup investments that somehow always look like steak dinners, designer clothes, and weekend getaways." That's a lie," Leo stammered, his voice cracking. He shot a desperate look at our father. "Dad, she's making it up. She's just jealous of the progress I'm making." My father turned to me, his brow furrowed with a deep, disappointed V. "Emma, this is hardly the time or place for such jokes. Apologize to your brother." "It's not a joke," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I could feel the weight of their collective judgment pressing in on me. They all saw me as the villain, the bitter older sister trying to ruin her brother's moment. They had built this narrative of Leo the provider and me well, I was just the reliable background character. It was easier for them to believe I was cruel than to believe their hero was a fraud. But as I met their glares one by one, a single thought gave me strength. They had forgotten one crucial thing. I had the receipts. Literally. The room remained in a state of suspended animation, the celebratory dinner now feeling like a wake. My words had drawn a line in the sand, and I knew here was no going back. The carefully constructed family portrait had cracked, and I was holding the hammer. The foundation of my family's delusion was built on years of my quiet compliance. My parents' view of their children had been cemented early on. Leo was the dreamer, the charismatic risk-taker who was destined for greatness. I was Emma, the practical one. The one who got a scholarship, graduated with honors, and steadily built a career as an architect, brick by painful brick. My successes were expected, quiet achievements. Leo's slightest efforts were treated as monumental triumphs. This dynamic wasn't just emotional, it was financial. When I was saving for a down payment on my first apartment, I worked a second job on weekends. When Leo decided to launch his first groundbreaking app, which never launched, my father gave him a significant sum from his retirement savings, calling it a seed investment. The business failed within a year, but the narrative didn't. Leo was praised for his courage to take a shot. The secret credit card started 2 years ago. Leo had come to me, his eyes wide with a mix of panic and excitement. His startup was on the verge of securing a major investor, but he was having temporary cash flow issues. He couldn't ask Dad again. It would look like he was failing. "It's just for a couple of months, Em," he had pleaded, his charm turned up to its maximum setting. "Just to cover some essential software and client dinners. I'll pay you back with interest as soon as the funding comes through." Like a fool, I believed him. I gave him a supplementary card linked to my primary account. The first month, the expenses were reasonable. The second, they crept up. By the 6th month, I was paying for charges from high-end boutiques and flights to cities where he had no business contacts. Each time I confronted him, he had a polished excuse. "It's all about perception, Emma. You have to look successful to be successful." He was so convincing, so utterly sure of his own importance, that he made my pragmatism feel like a personal flaw. I was the unsupportive sister who just didn't get the high-stakes world of tech entrepreneurship. Meanwhile, I was canceling my own vacation plans and using my annual bonus to pay down his spiraling debt, all to maintain the family peace and protect my parents from disappointment. The birthday dinner ended abruptly. People mumbled excuses and left in a hurry, eager to escape the suffocating tension. My parents didn't say a word to me as I gathered my coat and purse. The silence was their verdict. I was guilty of tarnishing their perfect family image. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was strained, wrapped in a familiar layer of gentle disappointment. "Emma, your father is terribly upset," she began, skipping any pleasantries. "You embarrassed your brother. You embarrassed all of us. Whatever this is about, you need to fix it. Call Leo and apologize." I listened, my hand tightening on my phone. This was her role, the peacemaker. But her peacemaking was just a form of emotional spackling, covering the cracks instead of repairing them. For her, the appearance of harmony was more important than the truth. "I will not be apologizing, Mom," I said, my voice firm. "There is nothing to apologize for." Her sigh was heavy with martyrdom. "I don't understand why you have to be so difficult." That was the moment the last bit of my compliance crumbled. Difficult? I was difficult for telling the truth. Fine. If they wanted difficult, I would show them. After I hung up, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I was no longer a victim of their narrative. I was going to be the author of a new one, based on facts. My trap wasn't some elaborate scheme. It was simply the unvarnished, documented truth. For the rest of the day, I didn't work on building plans. I worked on building a case. I logged into my online banking portal and began the meticulous process of downloading every credit card statement for the past 2 years. I highlighted every questionable charge from Leo's supplementary card. I printed out the text message exchanges where I would question a purchase, and he would reply with a dismissive or manipulative excuse. I found the emails where he promised repayment next month for sure. I organized everything into a neat, chronological file. Each document was a brick in the wall of reality I was about to build right in the middle of their fantasy world. The stack of paper grew, a testament to my silence and his audacity. It felt heavy in my hands, but it was the weight of liberation, not burden. 2 days later, my doorbell rang. It was Leo, just as I expected. He wasn't wearing his usual confident smirk. His face was pale, and his eyes were dark with a mixture of fury and fear. He pushed past me into my apartment without waiting for an invitation. "Are you happy now?" he seethed, turning to face me. "You blew everything up. Dad is barely." Speaking to me, "Our investors got wind that something is wrong. You couldn't just keep your mouth shut, could you?" I calmly closed the door and leaned against it, crossing my arms. "I've been keeping my mouth shut for 2 years, Leo. My silence was costing me my savings and my sanity. It's your turn to be quiet and listen." He scoffed, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "Listen to what? Your jealous, bitter lies. You've always resented me because Dad believed in my vision." "This has nothing to do with jealousy," I said, walking over to the sleek console table where I'd left a single piece of paper. "It has to do with this." I slid the document across the polished surface toward him. It was last month's credit card statement. He glanced at it, then back at me, his expression defiant. "So what? It's a list of expenses." "Is it?" I tapped a highlighted line item. "A $700 dinner at Le Fantôme. Your text to me said that was for courting a new developer." Funny, because I checked the restaurant's social media page. That same night, they tagged a photo of you and your girlfriend celebrating her birthday. That must have been some developer. His face went slack. The righteous anger drained away, replaced by the frantic look of someone caught in an undeniable lie. "And this," I continued, tapping another line, "a $1,200 charge at a designer boutique. Your text said it was for a new suit for a pitch meeting. But the charge is from their women's handbag department." Leo stared at the paper, speechless. His usual arsenal of charm and deflection was useless against the cold, hard facts printed in black and white. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The panic in his eyes was my confirmation. The polished veneer of the visionary entrepreneur was cracking, and for the first time, my brother had no idea how to talk his way out of the truth. His poorly executed lies had finally run into a wall of evidence he couldn't breach. Leo's retreat from my apartment was swift and silent, but I knew the fight was far from over. His next move was predictable. He went straight to our parents and painted me as a vindictive saboteur. He claimed I was misinterpreting the expenses, twisting the facts to make him look bad because I couldn't stand to see him succeed. And our father, Richard, desperate to keep his perfect image of his son intact, believed every word. The following evening, my father appeared at my door. His face was a thundercloud of disappointment. "I have never been so ashamed in my life, Emma," he said, his voice low and trembling with anger. "To think my own daughter would concoct such a malicious story to hurt her brother. Leo is building something important, and you are trying to tear it down out of pure spite." I had prepared for this. I didn't argue. I simply said, "Come in, Dad," and led him to my dining table. There, laid out like an architect's master plan, was the binder I had compiled. It was thick, meticulously organized, with colored tabs marking each month. "I am not asking you to believe me," I said quietly. "I'm asking you to believe this." I opened the binder to the first tab. "This is the month the card was activated. Here are the texts from Leo promising it was temporary, and here are the first charges." I turned the pages slowly, methodically. I showed him the vacation flights, the concert tickets, the subscription services for streaming platforms, all billed as operating costs. I pointed out the cash advances taken out in cities where Leo claimed to be at conferences. My father's stony expression began to falter. He sank into a chair, his eyes scanning the damning evidence. The sheer volume of it was overwhelming. These weren't interpretations. They were numbers, dates, and locations. My mother, who had followed him to my apartment and stood hesitating in the doorway, crept closer, her hand covering her mouth as she saw the scale of the deception. The final piece of irrefutable proof was a summary page I had created. It showed the total amount I had paid over 2 years, nearly $40,000. It also showed my own bank statements from the same period, with canceled vacation plans and postponed home renovations. The contrast was stark. Leo's life of leisure, funded by my deferred dreams. My father stared at the total at the bottom of the page, his face ashen. The spell was broken. The golden child myth, which he had so carefully nurtured, had evaporated under the harsh light of documented reality. The silence in the room was no longer one of accusation against me, but one of dawning, horrifying realization. The following Sunday, my mother insisted on a family lunch. Not a big gathering, just the 4 of us. The air was thick with unspoken words, heavy and uncomfortable. Leo arrived last, attempting a breezy entrance that fell flat in the tense atmosphere. He avoided my gaze, focusing on his plate as my mother served a pot roe. Asked that no one seemed to have an appetite for. We ate in near silence for several minutes until my father placed his knife and fork down with a deliberate clatter. The sound made us all jump. He cleared his throat, but instead of looking at me, his eyes were fixed on his son. "Leo," he began, his voice devoid of its usual warmth and admiration. It was flat, heavy with the weight of his new understanding. "We need to talk about your finances." Leo stiffened. "Dad, this isn't really the time." "This is exactly the time," my father cut in, his voice gaining a hard edge I had rarely heard him use with my brother. "For years, your mother and I have lauded you as a provider, an ambitious builder of dreams. We were wrong. The only thing you've been building is debt, and you've been using your sister's hard work as your foundation." Leo's face flushed a deep, mottled red. He looked at my mother for support, but she just looked down at her lap, offering him no sanctuary. "I have seen the statements," my father continued, his voice rising slightly. "I have seen the lies, the business expenses for handbags, the investor meetings that were birthday parties. It's over. The bank of your sister is closed, and as of today, the bank of Dad is too." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You will sell your car, you will get a real, paying job, and you will create a payment plan to pay Emma back every single dollar. Your startup, your vision, it can wait. Your character is what needs rebuilding now." It was a public dismantling of the golden child. In that moment, Leo wasn't the visionary hero anymore. He was just a man being held accountable. The humiliation was stark on his face. But then, something shifted. The defensive anger seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a look of utter defeat. He finally looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in years. "You're right," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Dad's right. I'm sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry. I took everything from you and I didn't even see it." The apology wasn't manipulative or charming. It was raw, broken, and real. It was the first honest thing he had said to me in a very long time. The aftermath of that Sunday lunch was not a magical fix, but a slow, deliberate rebuilding. True to my father's word, Leo sold his ridiculously expensive sports car the following week. He moved out of his trendy loft and into a small, sensible apartment. A month later, he got a job as a project manager at an established tech firm, a position that came with a steady paycheck instead of vague promises of equity. He presented me with a spreadsheet detailing a repayment plan. It was meticulous and realistic. Every month, a significant portion of his salary was transferred directly into my savings account. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the principle. Each payment was an acknowledgement of his fault and a step toward repairing the trust he had shattered. The most significant change, however, was in my father. A few weeks after the climax at the lunch table, he asked me to meet him for coffee. He looked older, the blind pride in his eyes replaced with a quiet sense of regret. "I failed you, Emma," he said, stirring his coffee without looking at it. "I was so caught up in the story I wanted to believe about your brother that I couldn't see the reality right in front of me. You were the provider all along. You were the one building something real and lasting, and I never gave you the credit you deserved. I am so sorry." Tears welled in my eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief. It was the validation I had unknowingly craved my entire life. We talked for hours that day, not as a father and his overlooked daughter, but as two adults finding a new, more honest footing for their relationship. Our family is different now. The gatherings are quieter, less performative. The conversations are more genuine. Leo and I are slowly learning how to be siblings again, without the toxic dynamic of the golden child and the silent supporter. He is finally standing on his own 2 feet, and I am finally free of the secret burden I carried for so long. The foundation of our family is no longer a fantasy. It's smaller, more modest, but it's built on the solid, unshakable ground of truth. And for the first time, I feel at peace within its walls.